You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello and welcome to the finals here at week 2, season 4 of the Eternal Tournament Series. I am Truedawn and joined by aReNGee.
Hey everybody, we're back for the finals.
Yep, and it's an awesome matchup. We just saw Lunex's Film Control deck in action, and now we will get to see it pitted against Moosh's Time Justice Primal Chalice deck, a deck that has risen to popularity in recent weeks, or like recent week. Something that I've seen on ladder a lot. A deck that looks a little bit unorthodox, considering it is a deck that just plays a bunch of nonsense creatures and also 4 harsh rule. So I could certainly see how, looking at the deck list, it may be a little unorthodox, but it's just all of those creatures are so expendable, and you draw a bunch of cards, and you build up to just this insurmountable advantage. It all kind of comes together. You're really like just a control deck that happens to win with whatever nonsense so happens to be left over.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of great cards that synergize with Chalice in the deck. We know there's Temple Scribes already draw you cards, then they draw you more cards, Acolytes, Healers, etc., etc. Eventually, you run out of Vanquishes, and then the 4-power units just sort of run you over. It's very difficult to push through for damage in the deck in the meantime, much like Shimmer Pack just tosses a bunch of nonsense it doesn't care about in the way. And then it also has the harsh rules to clean up. So it generally gets to survive to the late game. And with just House John cards turn after turn, it will eventually grind you down, even if none of its cards are individually that strong.
Yeah, and I have to imagine this matchup does favor Moosh because the large majority of a Lunex's spot removal is really bad in this matchup. Like using 1-for-1 removal against cards that draw cards and then get tapped for Chalice to draw more cards is just not a winning strategy. The sweepers are still going to be good. Things like Withering Witch, Black Sky Harbinger, and his proactive threats like Champion of Cunning are also powerful. But there's a lot of cards in his deck, at least for game 1, that are going to be like either dead or very hard to leverage.
Well, the good news is that Illunex isn't actually trying to win the game on the ground at all. All of his best threats, Champion of Cunning, Black Sky Harbinger, even the Singleton Thunderstrike Dragon, those are all in the air. So the majority of Moosh's units aren't going to be able to stop him. But we should be going into game just now, so we'll have to see how it turns out. Moosh is pushing for a 9-0 day. I believe he's completely undefeated on the day. Both players playing for the higher seeded winners invite. And we are in game.
Yep. Things are just loading in, and it's going to really rely heavily upon Scorpion Wasp. I think that that's going to be one of the pivotal cards in this game. It's one of Moosh's best ways to interact with a lot of the important cards Lunix is going to be presenting. So we'll see how many of those that Moosh does draw and how proactive Lunix is able to be as we are starting game 1.
Yeah, looking at this hand, though, we see how much those acolytes actually bail out a kind of, well, I guess you guys can't see Moosh's hand at home, but he's kept a very power light hand that is buffed up by an acolyte on 3 to get him back in good shape. On a Lunix's side, he's got the high end keep again, so we'll have to see if he can do some more of that runner power strategy that he showed off in the previous match.
He's getting part of the way there, and he does have the 3-drop in Bloodcaster, but he's unfortunately unable to cast it because he just currently lacks Double Shadow. Also, the Permafrost, pretty underwhelming card in this matchup, another spot removal spell that really doesn't matter a whole bunch. So he's going to need to draw a bunch of power to do anything, let alone like mount a reasonable offense to pressure Moach before he just draws the universe. And the seed off the top does help get him there.
No, he's throwing off a Permafrost kind of carelessly here, but as we've discussed, the Permafrost not a great card in this matchup. Every unit's basically the same at this point, anyways, so it doesn't really matter what you put it on. Here, he's just looking to push damage through as quickly as possible.
And I do like playing the Steward of the Past first. Just being a little bit patient with the champion, trying to get the 5th blue source, so it does have Aegis and Flying. The champion or the Steward of the Past is still like adequate pressure, so that does seem reasonable. And we do see the harsh roll pulled out from Moosh. Like that's as good as it's really going to get against Lunex's deck. He's not going to extend out too far generally. And we do see the 5th blue source for Lunex, and he will be able to play this Champion of Cunning with Aegis in flying and actually set up to where he can start casting these Thunderstrike Dragons on the following turn.
Wow. Lunex's draws this tournament, as far as I have seen, have been about average, I'd say. No,
Yeah,
they've been quite good. And this first champion's going to be taken down, but there's 3 more flyers in a Lunex's hand ready to go.
Yeah, we do see a Lunex favor the Black Sky Harbinger. It does deal with the Desert Marshal, and that's actually like quasi-relevant in this matchup. It is a thing that can get chaliced. Like the rando creatures in play do matter, so whenever you can like pick them off for minimal like expense to yourself, it doesn't matter. So it's even though Mosh was able to deal with the Champion of Cunning, his deck is not really equipped to react that much. It's really just the vanquishes and the harsh rules. The harsh rules doing a large portion of the heavy lifting. So given the threat density of Lunex's hand, it's likely going to be very difficult for Moosh to mount a substantive defense.
So it looks like a Lunex is just trying to set himself up for the Vera to get back the champion for as quick a clock as he can. Viewers at home can't see this, but Moosh is actually sitting on both a Harsh Rule and a Great Parliament, and he has quietly hit 8 and now even 9 power. So it looks like he's just trying to see how much value he can get out of this Harsh Rule. He might fire it off here, since he knows there's another dragon probably coming. He might wait, but his health total is dropping kind of low.
It is, but just like in the Combre matchup, you do get to be a little bit liberal with your life total. In this matchup, Lunex does have access to Channel the Tempest, so you can't be entirely reckless, but it's possible Moosh can justify taking another hit. He decides to be conservative, just pull the trigger on the Harsh Rule, follow up with the Combre Healer, and just play it safe. He really needs to find a Chalice, though, to like start doing what his deck is supposed to do, especially now that this Champion of Cunning is in play. No Shadow threshold for a Lunex, though, so it will only be hitting for 5. Getting the extra power on both that and the Vara would certainly matter a lot. It falls a little bit short.
Yeah, Moosh is sitting on a Scorpion Wasp, which should be able to take care of at least the champion. And this Desert Marshal does render the Vera into just a grounded threat, which, as we spoke about, is just going to get chumped forever by the random stuff in Moosh's deck. Lunex does pick up a lot of gas there with those double Wisdom of the Elders, and he's still looking in very good shape with 4 action spells in hand to Moosh's power, essentially.
Yep, the Scorpion Wasp will deal with one of these cards, likely the Champion of Cunning, and we do see it here with the Champion of Cunning. That still leaves the 6/6 in play. That matters, and there's a lot of follow-up coming. So if Moosh is able to find a Chalice, that's good, but this Great Parliament also does a reasonable job of stabilizing the board. But as we see in Lunex's hand, there's a lot of removal for these. He actually has to kill 2 of them and still have a profitable attack with his Vara. And we do see him just pulse checking his opponent. If he goes for the double block, the Annihilate will be Savage. Maybe the pause there might have given it away, but Moosh has the read. And now he actually has to follow up with Black Sky Harbinger.
So there's where the attack with the Combra Healer really limits Moosh's options. He could have, tossed it in an Owl in a double block, in which case it's not that terrible if one of them gets killed. But here, the Lunex just gets to go channel for face, and Moosh is out of cards, and he's out of health, and he's out of this first game here.
Yep, and this is a running theme that I've noticed whenever I've played Chalice decks, is the deck is markedly worse whenever you do not draw Crystalline Chalice. It is really important to draw that card.
So much like the Crown decks of old, or I guess the Crown decks of new, as we're starting to see a bit of a resurgence, if you don't draw your namesake relic in the early game, you're going to have a lot tougher time than somebody whose deck is, just a pile of strong cards.
We do see a Lunex seeing a hand that had 5 power and just having none of that. Doesn't want to keep 5 power hands. I want to keep 2. And he does draw 3 power hands. We'll see him draw up into his expensive cards, potentially again. It does have the Vara's favor as well, though. So this hand is actually pretty reasonable. 4 power is a very good place to be. And he just gets to kind of sit back and hang out until he gets up to his top end and just try to disrupt Moosh's nonsense as much as he can. Like Vara's favor on this Amber Acolyte is actually pretty good. It prohibits them from extending out, like to get value from a Chalice potentially. He can now play his Bloodcaster on the following turn, potentially Harbinger if he draws another power. So there's Lunis is a pretty good spot thus far. Things are going pretty well, but again, if Moosh has a Crystalline Chalice to extend and he starts to get value every turn, that is certainly the best path for him to victory.
So the Moosh report, Moosh does not actually have a Crystalline Chalice or really all that much going on there. He's got another one of his Parliaments and a couple of dorky power searching units, as well as a Harsh Rule, but no real action going on. He's really limited to just this 2/2 for in terms of actual pressure that he can put on a Lunix. And as we've seen, if a Lunix can get up to 8 power, his deck can do some ugly, ugly things to the opponent.
Yeah, the Great Parliament matters a lot. It's just really, it's just Chalice. Like if he draws Chalice, I feel like he actually has like is probably favored once Chalice gets online. It just makes all these nonsense creatures like relevant to deal with. They draw into more business. It's just really hard for Lewis to deal with. But when all these are just 2/2s or whatever, like he can just race with like a single Black Sky Harbinger or like leave back a Bloodcaster and block everything. So it's just unless Mosh is able to develop a Chalice, like his deck kind of doesn't work.
And looking back at Moshe's deck list, he doesn't really have that many ways to find one specifically. We've got no Celestial Omens or anything fancy like that. Just Wisdom and Elders for drawing power, so he's really relying on drawing it naturally. And so far, his deck has not delivered. But if you can get back up to 8 power, those now a pair of Parliaments in hand should be able to put a little bit of pressure back on a Lunix.
Yep, we do see the Black Sky Harbinger come down, take care of the small creatures, now representing a clock in the air. And the Lunax is all the while building up towards Channel Tempest, Bloodcaster Ultimate. Could even extend out the second Black Sky Harbinger if he's so inclined, but he does have to be conscious of Harsh Rule, so we may just see a pass.
Yeah, Alex just passed for the moment. His Bloodcaster's holding down the board. If he draws a power next turn, he can go for the Bloodcaster Ultimate if he so chooses. He's holding up Death Strike in case anything gets crazy out of the way, but Moosh, like you said, it's the Chalice and the Parliaments that are really pushing him forward. Looks like he's going to fire one off here and try to start getting some pressure back in his favor.
We'll see if Linux elects to Death Strike one of the birds end of turn, and he does see fit to do that. Sees Lightning Storm off the top of the deck. Not a great card until we find Withering Witch, although it does allow a reasonable attack that's 4/4. He could elect to actually the Harbinger is the follow-up here, so that's a lot better, allowing the 4/4 to die. Getting the 2/1 for value, now have a 6 power in the air, is going to demand like either a Harsh Rule or another Parliament from Moosh. We actually see the block on the Lumen Defender, which is pretty interesting.
If you're going to block there, you might as well double block, right? And get the free trade on the unit. It looked like Moosh was going to Harsh Rule and a Lunix just sort of whatever threw a unit in front, but does Moosh really need to Harsh Rule now?
Yeah, not necessarily. He's at 23 at some time, so that was a little reckless there from a Lunex, to say the least. But he does now have a Permafrost, and the Black Sky Harbinger does like prevent the other bird from attacking, but he wants to give beatdowns. That's what a Lunex is here to do, apparently.
So again, we're going to see the post-combat. Just kidding. We're not going to see the post-combat Lightning Storm, as this time he would have traded his Harbinger for the bird, which, you know, Linux doesn't necessarily want to do, since Harbinger is a much better racing tool than a 4/4 with just his lifesteal. Yeah. But Moosh did break the code. When you make random attacks that signify Harsh Rule, you're supposed to Harsh Rule afterwards, and caught a Linux sleeping there.
And it looks like a Lunex content to trade his Steward of the Past for the Lumen Defender. Being a little bit aggressive with the trading into this Lumen Defender, but he has now been able to old Bloodcaster. He can get up to 8 power, start Channel the Tempest. He's starting to make some forward progress towards snowballing out of control. All the while, Moshe still failed to find a Crystalline Chalice.
So he's now sitting on. That was a weird permafrost. He's now
Yes,
sitting
indeed.
on two. Moosh is now sitting on two harsh rules. But still has yet to find his namesake card, as you said. And the problem is that these harsh rules aren't really going to stop Alunix's game plan. He doesn't really care about the units he has in play right now. He's already got value off the Bloodcaster. He's got a ton of value off the Harbinger. And it's really the Channel of Tempest in hand that's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the next couple turns. So these harsh rules are not going to be able to stabilize Moosh's board all that well.
And there is a crystalline chalice, and we do see the permafrost on the 1/1 actually like mattering. I guess Alunex like saw the future. Cutting off crystalline chalice is a completely reasonable thing to do, and he will just jam in for 5 after drawing the Death Strike. Gets to kill the 4/4. So he will demand something from Moosh, and we do see the harsh rule pulled out. And we'll see if Moosh has any kind of follow up, especially a follow up that he can potentially draw a card from with Crystalline Chalice. And Combat Healer is kind of perfect. So Moosh starting to make some forward progress to maybe doing some relevant stuff.
So for those confused at home, since Crystalline Chalice isn't the most common card yet, you do need to exhaust the unit in order to use its ability. And since stun units are already exhausted, you can't use that, which makes the Permafrost kind of the Seeing Eye play, but still weird as hell because he traded three guaranteed damage in the air for the potential to stop a top deck chalice draw, which interesting, but very fancy. Although here we see Moosh is getting back into the game a little bit. He's got all his dorks on the ground. He's gaining some health back from his healers, and he's starting to get the draw engine going. So we'll have to see if that can turn the game around in his favor.
Yeah, and this is like kind of how I envisioned the matchup playing out when I first saw it. Is you just have all these nonsense creatures, do Chalice, they get value, it turns off all of Alunix's removal, he needs his sweepers and stuff. So if this game plan gets fully online, this is definitely a path for Moosh to win. He's on 13 life. It's a little precarious, but he's not facing down a huge amount of pressure. And if he's able to draw into another Great Parliament, or just continually drawing into like more chalices, or even just trying to reset with Harsh Rule, he is getting to a point where he's starting to have the inevitability in this game.
So he's got infinite harsh rules in hand. So every time that Alunex is going to be contesting the board in the next couple turns, he is going to be able to drop those down. So it does seem as though Moosh has turned the corner. And before we were talking about how Alunex doesn't care about his board at all. Well, without a board, he can't really contest what's going on Moosh's side. So Alunex is now looking for, I think, his other channel, the Tempest, as well as Azendel's Gift would really be good here.
Yeah, Azendel's Gift is I imagine, one of the more unbeatable cards in the matchup. And we do see a Celestial Omen that can go get it. It's the choice between that or extending out the champion this turn, both of which seem reasonable to me. We'll see what line Alunex elects to take. But either way, he gets to either put a substantial amount of pressure in play or set up an Azendel's Gift for the following turn, either of which are very, very good.
I imagine it's the gift line. Passing here, of course, reinforces that. But the pressure that you put on can be shut down by a simple Scorpion Wasp. He doesn't have any instant speed removal in hand to protect his champion, as well as the possibility of more harsh rules and silences and whatnot from Moosh. Really sort of put a damper on the aggressive strategy. You'd really like to cut down on his cards in hand and options before you go in for the kill.
Yeah, Azendel's Gift certainly does do a reasonable job of shutting down Chalice, but we actually see the Channel of the Tempest, which is too short of lethal, but still a bunch of damage. It actually would have been reasonable to see.
Does that do it?
Oh no, yeah, because he
Can
gets to
he
kill the thing
permafrost and push through?
if there's no Scorpion Wasp or anything. But yeah, if there's nothing there, this does represent lethal.
Okay, elects to go for the lightning storm, but there is a Scorpion Wasp, and
now
this will
subsequent
set him
Vara's
to
favors are
1.
lethal.
Yes, unless Moosh can find some kind of healing.
I like going for the Channel of the Tempest. I think that we could have waited a turn though, and then made sure this was lethal.
And then gotten the guaranteed lethal with the Vera's favor backing him up. That may have been a little bit overzealous, may not have counted, may have just thought, go for it here before he can draw some kind of more healing sort of thing. Because Moosh did need an ambush unit in order to not die there.
Yeah.
So it was sort of a do you have it? And it wasn't necessarily going to be the case that he did. But
especially when Alunex actually got one of the Scorpion Wasps out of the deck from the Bloodcaster, so he knows that there was only 2 left. And now he knows there's only 1 left, so his Champion of Cunning is like likely to hang around.
Well, that Lumen Defender is doing a lot of work here with bringing with it 5 health, which again pulls Moosh out of Vera's favor range, and now double removal spells have removed that champion from the board, and Lunix is running out of high cost cards to actually draw and play. He can toss down a bunch of stewards if he wants, but he needs to be, again, worried about the ever-present threat of Harsh Rule, overextending. Lunix is just running out of cards in his deck.
Yeah, he is down to 1 Champion of Cunning and 1 Vara and 1 Zendel's Gift, or like the 3 Haymakers left in his deck. But that's it. And the other cards are all just like Stewards of the Past and like kind of random stuff. It's possible that he just like doesn't have the steam left to cross the finish line here, and he may have just used that channel too prematurely and may never be able to bridge that 1-point gap.
So we didn't count out the channel damage, and Lunix may not have counted out the channel damage, and that may have harmed both of us, with us not seeing the line and Lunix not being able to execute on the kill. We've said it a couple of times, but Moosh is looking better and better as this game progresses.
Yep, and the Permafrost here will sneak through like 4 damage, putting Moosh to 1. So if Moosh's hand is like largely air, these Death Touchers are threatening pretty profitable attacks.
Well, here's a Harsh Rule probably going to come down. Unless he's got a number of blockers. I'm not sure.
Yep, we do see the Harsh Rule that comes down, and then the follow-up other Chalice.
Oh my god.
Lethal Vara's Favor will come down and close out game 2. So it worked
he
the whole
probably
time.
needed to draw that turn too. Because
Yes,
otherwise he tosses out 2 units, hits another Harsh Rule, and then Moosh totally stabilizes. Oh my god. Okay.
So very interesting game. That was pretty cool. We got to see both players like kind of running the gas. Although we did see the power of Moosh's deck once Chalice got online. Like Moosh was so far behind the whole game, and in spite of that, getting Chalice online, like even as late as he did, he was able to get to a point where he could potentially win the game. But he was just able to cheat through like that 4-point swing and then draw the Vara's Favor and close out the game.
All right. So a couple of interesting pieces of information. Lunix has just tossed over to Moosh that he thought that the channel was going to be lethal when he went for the Celestial Omen there. So he didn't count either, and he almost got punished for it, but drew out of it. Another interesting piece, this is a grudge match, as Lunix's single loss this tournament was to Moosh 2-0 in the Swiss. So there's a lot more than just an undefeated tournament on the line for Lunix. He's fighting to get back at his arch nemesis Moosh.
Yeah, and as we move into sideboarding here, I think that Moosh does get a lot of attractive options. Backlash, Elian's Favor, the face Aegis Matters for various things. Chill the Tempest if he wants to go bigger. Additional Great Parliaments. Red Frog's also potentially reasonable. Scorpion Wasp, very important. So you'll likely see some number of those cards. And quickly on the side of Lunix, Rain of Frogs, if you could hit Chalice, I imagine the game just ends on the spot. Backlash and Sabotage. Sabotage specifically also deals with Chalice. So those cards likely being pretty important, likely to see those come in.
You're kind of in a weird spot there because Sabotage is terrible against everything that isn't Chalice or Harsh Rule.
Correct.
Since the majority of Moosh's deck is just garbage units. But we are in game. Moosh does have a Chalice in hand, so we will be seeing Chalice on 4. And that puts him in really good shape, I think, in this matchup. Since Lunix does not have anything in hand to stop that, and as we keep saying, game in, game out, Illunix's deck is very high curve, and he keeps ending up with high curve starts. Lots of expensive units or expensive cards in hands that you can't play just yet.
Yeah, but fortunately for him, this is a matchup where he can afford to just kind of durdle for a bit. He just, like, I think that keeping do nothing high power hands is probably where you want to be in this matchup, because it's all about the end game. The early game is irrelevant. So as long as he can draw just one more power, he'll be able to deploy a large portion of his hand. Even if he wants to play out the naked Champion of Cunning, he can do that as well. But he likely won't be under enough pressure to justify that.
So Moosh goes with a line here that's pretty surprising to me, but maybe more intuitive to players who play a lot of the Chalice decks. He finds the draw actually more important than holding up the Scorpion Wasp for potential late game applications there, in terms of taking out something like a big flyer or something like that. He'd rather get the draw. So just get the wheels turning.
Yep, and Illunix does have this as Endal's gift that is if he is able to hit a power in the next 2 turns, will come down, and if Moosh does not have an answer to it, probably just ends the game. You will be able to fight back a bit with the Chalice, but it's going to be a big uphill slog.
So Moosh does have a couple of decays in the sideboard, which he may have elected to bring in, as well as an Island's Favor or 2 to toss an Aegis on himself. So if he gets any of those cards, he's going to be able to protect himself from the gift. But other than that, and if the decays aren't in, it probably is game over when that gift comes down on 7.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten to a point where he has 6 power, he has the Chalice in play, so he will be able to, like, draw multiple cards a turn if it does come to that. So he does, like, he has ways to fight back, but it's still going to be, like, it's just going to be rough. So we'll see if Illunix does draw power this turn. He does not, saving Moosh a little bit, but the saving grace is a 5/6 dragon, so still something Moosh has to contend with.
What's really saving Moosh right now is the fact that Illunix, for the first time maybe this tournament, unluckily does not have at least one half of his champions active on 6 power. So if those were coming down, Moosh would be under even more pressure than he currently is, since Illunix's hand is just all units, and Moosh's hand is, well, it's a mixture of stuff. Interestingly, he's brought in Channel the Tempest and has 2 copies of that. So he's certainly buffed his deck up with a lot of late game power that's not going to be all that good if the gift ever comes down.
And there it goes. So the gift will make those Channel the Tempests quite a bit worse. Both like now and like forever. It's just, so now he has to decide what he can deploy this turn, what he is willing to part with. Just going to be a hard choice. He's probably only going to be able to deploy 2 or possibly 3 cards this turn with the mana he has available, and then that's largely all he's going to have to live with for the rest of the game. He does have a sizable board, and that does matter. He could potentially attack past Illunix if he was able to deal with this Thunderstrike Dragon. Maybe give the beatdowns is likely his best line, but we will see as this turn progresses what he actually has the ability to do.
Interesting that he chose to draw a card there rather than holding on to that 2/2 for a potential draw next turn to refill his hand. He does get up to 8 power, but he's not able to deploy his Parliament that he had in hand, as we see there, it going away. But his board is quite sizable, and Moosh doesn't know this, but we can see that Illunix does not have any of his sweepers available. So he may just get overwhelmed on the ground if he's not able to push all those Thunderstrike Dragons in the way first.
Yep, he will be able to play another creature that profitably blocks his turn, so he does have the 2 large dudes back. But Moosh is now drawing 2 cards a turn. Moosh currently lamenting his fate, not really appreciating the gift Illunix had to offer. Trying to draw out of it with this Chalice, seeing what he can cobble together. And another Comber Healer is another creature. He gets to keep this chain rolling. So his board is like reasonable, but I think what's just going to happen is Illunix is just going to play these flyers, like threaten blocks, and then these champions are just going to pump everything so big that's just going to be a single lethal swing. Not next turn, but the turn.
Very close. Bar that Comber Healer, it actually would be a lethal swing next turn.
There's the
CP at
4/4 in the air to
31.
chump block, but there also is the Channel of the Tempest. So
And Death Strike to remove it out of the way. This may end up being lethal anyways. If there is no other flyer, and there isn't. So we Death Strike the 4/4, we go for the all-in, and then Channel finishes the game.
Yep. So that is going to be a pretty decisive 3-0 victory in the finals for Lunex and his Fel control deck, and Fel once again on the top of the mountain after a long hiatus.
So Moosh absolutely massacres everyone on his way to this point, dropping just 2 games, and then Lunex gets revenge with a swift 3-0 victory over Moosh to take the title. So congratulations to Lunex for his 3-0 win over his Swiss his sole Swiss loss, and congratulations to Moosh for his great tournament win and his finalist spot. Both of those will have now earned their berths in the Season 4 Invitational, so we'll be seeing them again.
Yeah, it's awesome to see both of these decks. Cool decks from both players. Fel Control coming back, a special iteration of it from Lunex. A lot of interesting inclusions. Vara mainly giving him a lot of staying power, still remaining proactive the champion of Cunning. Just being able to just draw really well and always hit power. Fortunately for him, it was a really cool series of games throughout the top 8 to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to see Feln back again. It's something that's moved away a little bit from ladder decks as people complain about Obelisk and Combray and all those things. But here we see, maybe it's because of the best of 3, maybe it's just, this more proactive build with the champions and the Veras. But it's great to see it doing well again, and it's also great to see a cool deck like the 3-color Chalice coming out of this tournament and being very successful. So always great to see lots of variety.
Yep, seeing people innovate on new things, seeing new players even rise to the top. Lunex, relatively new to the scene, so awesome to see people like that have success.
So I'm taking Rekenner's job again. He's been fired from the thanks, so I'll be doing our final sign-off. Thanks to everybody who came out, both the players who played in the tournaments and you guys, the viewers at home who are watching and cheering on all of your favorites. If it's not for you guys, we wouldn't be able to have what we have now. I like doing this. I like to see all the great matches that we have here of Eternal. Putting on tournaments is a lot of fun, even if it is a lot of work, and it's great to have everybody coming out. I'm supposed to give a special shout out to Rekenner, which is a little weird since I just fired him, but he's our tournament organizer, constantly working behind the scenes. He tosses up all the stats, all the data, builds all the deck list documents and things, and just, he runs the event week in, week out. So a big thanks to him for that. I did it. It was awful. Sarius is doing it. It's for ESL. It's awful there. So big thanks to him. Also a huge thanks to Miller Tool, our producer, who's coming in and taking my shoddy little backroom stream into the really cool thing that it is here today. Big thanks to him for all the work that he's put in. I don't put any pressure on him. He puts all the pressure on himself to constantly improve and iterate on the stream. And it gets better and better every week because of all the effort that he puts in. So a big thank to him. And of course, I'd like to thank my co-caster Truedawn and the previous caster Bear Driss for coming out every week and putting these on. It's a big help to have you guys. Just stable casting. You guys know the game. You guys know what you're doing, and it's great to have you here. Of course, wouldn't be complete, and we wouldn't actually be able to run this at all without our Patreon supporters. A special thanks to our $20 Patreon backers, Chuck Hurst, Sean Kim, Mark, or Chibi Kawai. I pronounced that wrong. I always pronounce that wrong. It's fine. Greg Rouse Emery, EZYE, and Chris Kieran's. Big thanks to all you guys. If you guys want to get involved in checking out on supporting the ETS and all the other stuff that we do here at aReNGee Eternal, be sure to check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/aReNGee Eternal. And special new for, I think this just popped last Sunday, we are now officially Twitch affiliates, not partnered yet, it's still in process. But that means that you can now cheer for us. So if you guys have some bits lying around and you want to spend them on your favorite stream, which hopefully us, we'd love to have that. We'd love to have you guys, be able to show your support in any way that you can. So that's now available. And yeah, just thank you, Truedawn, and I will now hand it over to you to talk about the stuff that you do.
Oh, awesome. Well, I am Frank Moon. I go by Truedawn. I stream Eternal and other card games every weekday from 9 a.m. Eastern Time until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can find that stream at Twitch TV/TruedawnFM. So we just generally try and learn stuff. I'll brew decks. Sometimes we try hard. Sometimes we mess around with nonsense. If you're looking to explore what Eternal has to offer and check out some other card games as well, I definitely recommend you stop by, hang out with us. We have a really good community in the stream. A lot of support, a lot of cool people that recently helped me get partnered. Without them, I couldn't do that. So it's just a awesome environment, and it'd be cool if any of you felt inclined to become part of it.
We're hoping if we bring enough partnered streamers in as casters, it'll eventually rub off onto us.
It's contagious.
So we'll hand it over now to our tournament organizer, Kenner, who's going to do our final send-off and tell you guys about something pretty special.
Hey guys, this is Rex real quick. Just to tell you, we'll be hosting at the end of the stream Ilyan. He is a content creator for Newmont Gaming, and at the moment he is currently doing a charity stream for Doctors Without Borders. He's raised just under $6,500 over the last 4 days, and he is going to be streaming for at least another 16 hours. His final day is a 60-hour stream, depending on how much money he raises. If he gets up to $9,500, he'll be adding another, I believe, 12 hours onto his stream. So he'll be streaming until like Monday morning if he reaches a goal. And if he reaches $10,000, he's going to eat a Carolina Reaper on stream. Great stuff. Consider checking him out. He's streaming Magic Online right now. It's a different game, but it's for a great cause. It's what I'm going to be watching after this is over. So have a good night, everyone, and consider donating charity.